Democracy is based upon the belief that there are extraordinary possibilities in ordinary people. Democracy is justice. Democracy is a voice. Democracy is faith. Democracy is the world around us. Democracy is inspiration. Democracy is leadership. Democracy is possibility. Democracy is action. Democracy is the Jamestown Project.
The American dream was born on the banks of the River James.
Say with me, 400 years. 400 years. Most of us, I am certain, never figured out that before the Pilgrims of Plymouth came the Africans of Jamestown.
But Jamestown also brings to mind some of the irony of our democratic tradition. Mm-hmm. That is the notion of budding democracy and slavery set side by side in Jamestown.
Our beginnings come from great promise, which we should treasure, but also a terrible, terrible nightmare.
So the name is a constant reminder that democracy has always been a struggle, that race has always been a subtext to the American democratic experience.
But really there are challenges that go back to the very beginning of our country. We've always had an agenda that was pressing and absolutely crucial to see that everybody who's part of this country is really part of this country.
That is to say that democracy is not passive, it is active. We must do democracy. A fulsome notion of democracy relies on understandings of community and equality. It means that all of us, citizens of this wonderful country, must be active participants in the circumstances, policies, rules, and regulations that shape and impact our lives. Well, that's what Jamestown does.
The project is about reinventing, reinvigorating our democratic experiment. And what Jamestown envisions doing is really looking towards creating a 21st century democracy that's reflective of the richness of America's past. And you know, I tell people, in short, it is the only dynamic think action tank in the country that is founded and operated primarily by young people of color and women.
We are really capturing the language from the start to say that that this democracy was formed by a lot of different kinds of people in a lot of different kinds of ways. And we have to start telling a more accurate historical picture.
And see, that's what I think we have to do. We have to aggressively use all the things at our disposal, just like the professionals are using all the things at their disposal to do negative. We have to be just as smart and creative on the positive flip. And then really use it as a virus. That's why I believe I'm so hopeful about change. You say, why can you be so hopeful? Because viruses are big these days. And viruses are what creates change. You know, I don't know who's read Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, but it's all about the idea of how a subculture can come to define a culture.
It is critical that parents do anything and everything that they can to promote reading to their children. Look everywhere that they need to look to find that one book that will pique their child's interest.
We have to organize our efforts. You've written a book on the covenant, which is the what. You've written the second book, which is the how. The real question is who or whom? And the answer is you.
The covenant in action shows us that everyday ordinary folk understand that democracy is not the possession of elites or leaders, but is the possession of each and every one of us. That democracy requires that you and I tend to it, that we care for it, that we pay attention to it.
Our goal is to empower people, to inspire them, and to give them the tools to become agents of change in their own lives.
The door is now open a crack. We, the Jamestown Project, really want to burst the door down. We want the conversation to go forward. We have got to step up our game. It is well past time.
Yes, the world, everyone came to think, was really about struggle between not countries and not nations, but between races.
And so part of what I think is distinctive about this moment is that we have a new generation of not only African American intellectuals, but a new generation, we can call them the Joshua generation as Barack Obama described them, but a new generation of folk who have been forged under different conditions, who are thinking imaginatively, innovatively, and creatively about the conditions of black folk and are primed and ready to assume not the mantle of leadership, that's not the point, but to assert, right, a new model or new models, right, new strategies, new responses, right, new accounts of the conditions of black folk.
And the Jamestown Project is a particular moment in this much larger story and struggle and tradition.
This democracy is ever forming. It's always incomplete, always in need of assistance, always forming. The Jamestown Project is a new, relatively new institution that is taking a hard look at American democracy and doing everything it can to improve it. But when we look at these issues, we are always looking at it with the history in mind, particularly the history of difference, the history of race, the history of gender. We have a special emphasis, look, and a love for marginalized communities, historically and in contemporary terms. And this is the most dynamic group of young folk, we think, in the country who are working to make this a better place.